The 2025 NBA playoffs are a little less than a month away now, and as is basically an annual tradition at this point, I wanted to talk about what every single playoff team's X factor is. Hello everybody, welcome to Rusty Buckets. Subscribe to the channel and drop a like on this video, and check us out over on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you would like to enjoy this as an audio-only experience. Also check out Little Rusty Buckets if you would like to enjoy smaller videos about more random topics. That will be linked in the description. But with that said, first things first, let's just quickly define what an X factor is. I do this in every single video just for the sake of not confusing people. I think when I actually did X factors in the past, I initially just did a list of players. It was just, this player is this team's X factor. But rather, I just like to view X factor as essentially the factor that will make or break your team. If your team loses, this will probably be the reason that it happens. Now, one thing that I want to nix from the qualifiers here is health, because that's kind of an obvious answer across the board, but especially in the case of teams that have guys who are super hobbled or consistently getting hurt. It's a pretty big cop-out of an answer, so no health stuff. We're just going to talk about purely the basketball ability of these NBA teams. Also, I did not include the 9 or 10 seeds in either conference, as they, to me, are significant steps below the top 8 seeds in their conference. Maybe they can win the play-in, but they damn sure aren't going past that, so we're not worrying about them. But with that said, let's first start in the Western Conference with the Oklahoma City Thunder, whose biggest X factor is going to be three-point shooting and secondary shot creation. Now, to be clear, I don't think this is an area that the Thunder are necessarily weak in, so much as they are such a perfect team across the board that the only areas that they are not excellent at stand out. And those two things are three-point shooting and, again, secondary shot creation. So the three-point shooting thing stems from the fact that there are a good handful of players on this team who are, I don't want to say fake shooters, because fake shooters implies that they're just going to fall off a cliff, and I don't expect that to happen by any means. But there's guys like Aaron Wiggins, guys like Cason Wallace, guys like even Chet, just because he can hesitate on his threes sometimes. J-Dub, especially this year, has taken a big dip as a three-point shooter. Alex Caruso can be very inconsistent. So there's just a lot of guys on this team whose three-point shot I don't always super trust. Even Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he's had a big step up as a three-point shooter this year in terms of increasing his volume, increasing how many pull-up threes that he takes. But, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if there were games where just nobody's shot really seemed all that good and suddenly they're not doing very good. Now, the thing about OKC that they have to their benefit that I think is just going to be infallible, something you don't have to worry disappearing at all, defense and SGA and his dominance offensively. People seem to think that SGA is going to falter in the playoffs. He literally was great in the playoffs last year. Obviously, OKC ended up faltering, but that was not because of SGA. If you have SGA and you have that defense and then everybody else can just do a decent enough job offensively, you have more than enough for a winning formula. The secondary shot creation aspect of this primarily just comes down to J-Dub as well as Chet Holmgren. These guys are very, very good offensive players, but when SGA is sitting, or maybe he's just not having the best night and you want to give it to somebody else, sometimes it's a little iffy, just a little bit more iffy than you would like. And again, when we're talking about the flaws with the Thunder, I want to clarify that we are nitpicking, but if I am going to nitpick, J-Dub as a jump shooter can be very inconsistent, and he's taken a significant dip in his jump shot ability in this season. Not to say that I expect him to be a bad shooter, but if he has those games where he's taking all these mid-range pull-ups and they aren't dropping, he's taking catch-and-shoot threes and they aren't dropping, he suddenly becomes a significantly less valuable offensive player. Chet Holmgren has had limited opportunity to actually display his shot creation this year just because of how little he's played, but it's something he's always been able to do, and something that I hope that he builds upon further, because just he's a walking mismatch for so many different reasons. I don't think these are going to hurt OKC. They're my title favorite. They're going to continue to be, but if they do lose, this will be the factor, more likely than not. I was a big advocate for them trading for Cam Johnson to stabilize some of that three-point shooting. Since then, Aaron Wiggins, who probably would have been in that deal, has been awesome, so it might have worked out to their benefit, but I am going to be wary of the shooting. That is the number one concern. For the Houston Rockets, to put this rather simply, it is half-court offense. While they are a great defense and they're a really good transition team, they're bottom 10 in the league in half-court shot creation, half-court offensive rating, etc. Şengün not been nearly as good offensively as he was last year. Maybe not nearly as good. That's not right, but definitely worse. He's taken a step up defensively, so he's overall improved, but in terms of just putting the ball in the bucket when the pace slows down in the playoffs, the Rockets just are not very good at that. Jalen Green is going to be getting his first taste of the playoffs, and we'll see if he's an elevator, but if I had to guess, he's probably somebody who gets worse in a postseason setting, so I'm not expecting the half-court offense to look pretty for the Rockets, and I'm all but certain that they will eventually be losing. Maybe you could get a conference finals appearance out of them if you get the right matchups, but I'm guessing it's second round exit. And if it's not that reason, I will be shocked, other than if it was health instead. Moving on to the Denver Nuggets, we of course have everybody that is not named Nikola Jokic. Basically, having the core guys, Aaron Gordon, Jamal Murray, and Michael Porter Jr., and I can say Christian Brown at this point is a part of the core. If all those guys do their jobs at a B+ to A- level, then the Denver Nuggets can be contenders. But the problem is, so often, especially from like the likes of Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr., you get these bad games from them where they just do not hit their shots, and then they aren't contributing a whole lot defensively or in the playmaking conversation, especially Michael Porter Jr., even if he has gotten better in recent years. So you need to just not have those games where they completely shit the bed, and if you can do that and then maintain a solid defense, especially thanks to Aaron Gordon's presence. Also, I want to give Aaron Gordon credit because he's been hitting threes like crazy this year. If they can all do their job well enough, Nikola Jokic is still good enough to bring them to the promised land. It's just unlikely that everybody will. For the Los Angeles Lakers, this is a very easy one to call out. It is center play. Jackson Hayes has been good in the role that he has had, but ultimately he's still playing 23 minutes a game since Luka has been a Laker. They like to run a lot of small ball, and I do think that's for the better because they have really, really, really rock-solid personnel for it. Like Vando playing the small ball 5 is great. You have Luka and LeBron who are both really good rebounders. Really big guys, even if even if Luka's playing the guard position, when you're doing a small ball lineup, but your guard is 6'8", that's still not necessarily all that small. You know what I mean? Jackson Hayes can catch lobs, and he's a decent rim protector, and he's a decent rebounder, and his numbers have gone up since since Luka has been a Laker, but he's not going to be a great starting caliber center by any means, and I think the Lakers will, if anything, lean on their small ball more and more going into the postseason. It will depend heavily, of course, on what their matchup ends up being, but if they end up getting a bad matchup where they need Jackson Hayes a lot, well, I don't think you really want to be in the position where you need Jackson Hayes a lot. So even if he does get more playing time, you're probably not thrilled about it. So yeah, that is easily the biggest concern with the Los Angeles Lakers. I don't even think it's close, really. Everything else is pretty good. The defense has been good. You have a great core 3 offensively. Decent enough role players, guys who can hit catch and shoot shots. You just really don't have a great interior presence by any means. The Memphis Grizzlies, this is another one that to me is just very obvious. Ja Morant becoming more involved in the offense without outright abandoning the old system. I love a lot of what Memphis has done this year to make their offense function really well without Ja Morant being at the core of it, but I think for the ceiling of this team to be raised as high as it could be, it will be determined heavily by Ja Morant. And if you're doing the offensive system that you have been doing in the regular season with him out there, then Ja Morant's just not going to play nearly as well as you would like him to. And the thing about Ja as a star/borderline superstar player is the floor with him, especially the floor with him in the context of this team, can be pretty bad because his efficiency just still will not be all that amazing, even with less shot opportunities. And he's not like a great defender by any means. He's certainly not a very good off-ball player. So basically any time that Ja is not getting the ball a lot of the time, he's just not going to be nearly as valuable as he would otherwise be. And while I like the kumbaya of this roster, I love that it's like, hey man, we're 14 men deep. That means it's hard to beat us. In the postseason, that will not matter nearly as much. the system that they run will not matter as much. A lot of it will come down to how effectively Jaren deals with double teams in the postseason. There's a lot of stuff working in Memphis's favor, but I think if Ja Morant is just meh, I don't think you can win anything. I think you need him to be a superstar level guy. And then when he's not on the floor, all that extra stuff that they've been doing this year is awesome. It means that the offense could still be good and sustainable without your superstar, unlike what it has been in recent years. But it needs to be a balance. If they're just saying we're sticking to our guns from the regular season, Ja Morant be damned, it's not going to work out. I'm pretty sure. For the Golden State Warriors, I would say that playoff Jimmy just has to show up. I'm not necessarily saying it needs to be some extreme. I don't need him to act like he did against the Milwaukee Bucks a couple of years ago when he had like that 56-point game and averaged like 38 points for the entire series. I don't need some crazy extreme like that, but at least 22 points, 5 rebounds, 7 assists, something like that. Like, I need more than what he's been doing in Golden State thus far. Now, Jimmy is a remarkable connecting piece. That's a big part of the appeal of him as a player, is that he can really dominate the game without getting 20. But when you have that, then it just means if you can also score 20, that makes you all the extra more impactful. So if Jimmy, playoff Jimmy, can really elevate as a scorer, really be one of the best options in the, just to get a bucket in the league, then how much that opens up the game for Steph, how much that opens up the game for the rest of the role players, it is extraordinary. It would make such a dramatic difference in how well this postseason can go for the Warriors. And I personally am of the belief that he can at least get to the 20-point per game mark at the bare minimum. So he's got a lot going for him. I believe in Jimmy Butler, even still at the age of 35. But if he just ends up being a 14-5-5 guy, I think it won't be enough. I think it'll just be a little bit too short because the Western Conference is really, really competitive. For the Minnesota Timberwolves, yet another fairly obvious one. Julius Randle and his offensive fit / overall sustainability for his production in the playoffs. Obviously, it is no secret that Julius Randle has not done a very good job in the playoffs in the limited opportunities that he's had. That does not mean that the same thing is going to happen this time around. We have a very different context of this team than what it was before, but nevertheless, it is a concern because he has a track record. But beyond that, the offensive fit lately has been good because pretty much every game that Julius has been playing for the Timberwolves, they've been winning. So, you know, a big part of that is that his jump shot's been working lately more than it has been. But will that hold up under the scrutiny of a postseason defense, of a team that's actually really locked in? I don't know about that. I think that will be the proving grounds, and it will entirely determine whether or not Julius Randle is a Minnesota Timberwolf next year or not. For the Los Angeles Clippers, this would be one of those instances where you could just go with a layup of the health, like I mentioned in the intro, but like, Kawhi's health is obvious. Yes, if Kawhi does not play, then I just don't think there's enough here. So what I'm going to go with instead is how well will their best perimeter defenders hold up on the offensive end? Because Kawhi can be their best perimeter defender, but it's not his specialization. He's not paid to just play defense, where guys like Derrick Jones Jr. and Chris Dunn absolutely are. So if you're taking those guys out of the equation offensively, if the defense can just completely sag off of them and you end up hurting the Clippers offense, well, at that point, you are probably going to take a huge hit on, you're going to have to choose to take a hit on one end of the floor or the other. Either you're not going to play your best point of attack guys and your defense will be worse, or you will play them and your offense will be worse. And it's going to be heavily predicated on Derrick Jones Jr. being able to hit his threes, running in transition, getting offensive rebounds, cutting at the right time to catch lobs, things like that. I'm more confident in him. Chris Dunn, I've been worried about because I fucking love Chris Dunn. He's one of my favorite guys in the entire NBA because I really liked him when he was in Chicago. But his jump shot's still not real, and defenses have already been playing him like it's not real. Watching that game against the Cleveland Cavaliers, they just left him wide open in the corner, and he took 3 of them, and he missed 3 of them. So just not a good situation there, and it does have me concerned that that would be what bites them. We're going to move on to the Eastern Conference with the Cleveland Cavaliers. I'm going to go with guard defense, specifically Darius Garland, because while Donovan Mitchell might be a 6'1" guard, he has longer arms, he's really strong, he plays more physical in general. So he's not as easy to target on a mismatch, but Darius Garland is not only short, but he is also not particularly bulky. And what we saw a lot when the Celtics have matched up against them this year is targeting that, trying to ensure you get that mismatch as much as possible and abusing that. And that's exactly what will likely happen with him. The big thing is that he also needs to hold up offensively enough that you can deal with that. Darius has had his fair share of playoff struggles. I think a lot of the criticism around him throughout his career has been unfair, but just being a small guard who relies entirely on touch, who can be beat up a lot while trying to navigate traffic throughout the entirety of a physical series, like, there's a lot of stuff working against that archetype of player inherently, and if he ends up being so bad defensively that you're damn near playing him off of the floor, paired with his offense just not being that great, it's probably, at least for him, it's over at that point. Now, in the right matchup, you can just coast on Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley winning that one for you, but if Darius Garland is terrible, if he's just not good, if he's just kind of cut out of a series, then the offense gets a lot worse. Gets a whole lot worse. And against a team like the Celtics or the Thunder, I just don't think you can afford to take a hit like that. You can afford that against some lesser matchups in the Eastern Conference, but the further you go, if Darius Garland ends up being an issue for you, it's a really big fucking issue. So I believe personally he will hold up well enough offensively that it's not a concern for real, but it will be the number one go-to target on this team that is otherwise pretty good defensively. They've got some good defensive wing options between DeAndre Hunter and Isaac Okoro. They have, obviously, Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen, and I think Donovan Mitchell has improved a good bit as a defender over the years, so they have a damn good defense. I just worry that Darius Garland might be the weakest link in that defense, and maybe such a weak link that it doesn't break it, but it certainly makes it unstable. For the Boston Celtics, again, the Porzingis health thing is easy and obvious, so I'm just going to say three-point shooting, specifically from Jaylen Brown and Jrue Holiday. And I'm, of course, referring to their percentages here. Jaylen Brown, I believe, at this point is sub 33% on the year. Jrue Holiday is not much better than that. He went from I think he was literally the highest percentage catch-and-shoot three-point shooter in the NBA last year, out of the corner anyways. This year, his corner percentage has gone from like 60% to under 30%. Like a comical dip in that shot on the floor, which was basically the main spot you would see Jrue Holiday within the Celtics offense last year. So if that trouble continues, and both of these guys are pretty high volume three-point shooting guys, and they aren't hitting those open looks, defenses are going to start to play it like that a lot more, and over time you're just going to see a more congested lane. You're going to see a Celtics offense that seems like it's just forcing threes rather than actually creating good looks. And the Celtics' ability to just kind of suck on offense for no reason for like a 3 or 4 minute stretch, it hasn't completely disappeared. And same as I said with the Cavaliers, like you can afford this slippage against some of the worst teams in the East, but against the Celtics, and if they got by the Celtics against the Thunder, that's not going to cut it. For the New York Knicks, it's depth, it's depth, it's depth, it's depth. Do I even need to fucking explain? I'm sorry, Knicks fans, if you wanted to hear more, but yeah, you guys just don't have anyone that good off of the bench. For the Indiana Pacers, I'm going to go with a rebounding/defense. They are currently 29th in the NBA in rebounds per game. They are also 15th in defensive rating. Obviously, they're a worse rebounding team than they are a defensive one, but being middle of the pack defensively, if you're trying to actually contend or anything in that category, it's just too low, and I don't really think they have the facilities to turn it on for the better in the postseason. So overall, they just kind of are a really, really good offensive team, and that's not enough, which is pretty much what was known about the Indiana Pacers this whole time anyways. I wouldn't be surprised if they went on a little bit of a run, but definitely just not enough there. For the Milwaukee Bucks, they have very, very minimal true scoring options beyond Giannis and Dame. They also have the third lowest assist average for a top 8 team in either conference. So Xing out the 3 terrible teams that have a lower assist ratio, the Bucks are the third worst of these 16. Kyle Kuzma still can't shoot threes. he just, at a certain point, do we just determine that he can't shoot threes? Because once again, he's sub 30% with the team. He's had some moments, things looked good at first, but it's just kind of come back to the same blah that Kyle Kuzma has been for his entire career. Bobby Portis is cool, but his defense isn't very good, and he can be a black hole on the offensive end to the detriment of the rest of the team, even if he can score one-on-one theoretically. Brook Lopez occasionally scores in the half court, but like, there's just nobody other than Giannis and Dame to really backpack any level of shot creation. And between them, I just don't think they really have enough. They've never been complementary enough together as a duo to actually feel like that's a powerful enough offensive force to build around. At the very least, not build around in the way that they have been doing it. So I just don't think they're going to be particularly strong contenders for that reason. For the Detroit Pistons, it is secondary shot creation. Tobias Harris is not nothing. Malik Beasley. I don't know why the fuck I said Bradley Beal. Malik Beasley is a very high volume-ish, not very, but a higher volume scorer, but it's primarily not off of the dribble stuff. You don't get a much off the dribble stuff from Tim Hardaway, certainly not from Fontecchio. Duren is a really good scoring option, but he's not a good creating option. That's an important distinction. So you're pretty much entirely relying on Cade Cunningham backpacking the creation on offense, which is what he's been doing all year. So there's no real surprise in that, but it is enough that it's a problem that is fine in the regular season and not so fine in the postseason. When you have a very heavily heliocentric team, especially one that's not like filled with remarkable play finishers, guys like Duren is a lob target and just overall paint target. Malik Beasley is a catch and shoot option. These are really, really good choices, but pretty much everything else in terms of play finishing is fine. And Cade Cunningham's a really good playmaker, so he can make it work. And I think he can make it work in a playoff matchup or two. But what will ultimately buy them in, or what will ultimately do them in at the end, is he will just have to do too much. And defenses will load up on him a ton, ask other players to be the ones who are doing the creation. And at that point, I think their offense would fall apart. Would have to be the right defense that can actually do something to seriously interfere with Cade. But like I said, being the X factor, if they lose, this will probably be why. For the Atlanta Hawks, it's actually the same thing, but even worse. The guy who was a secondary creator on this team was DeAndre Hunter, and they traded him for second-round picks. Another one was Jalen Johnson, who has since been hurt and is out for the entirety of the season. And the other guy who's been bad for the Hawks this year, but was recently traded, was Bogdan Bogdanovic, and all of those guys are gone. It is Trae Young, and it is Karis LeVert. Onyeka Okongwu can sometimes do a little something. Zachary Risacher has been much better offensively since those deals. So, not been nothing good, but on top of the fact that there's so little shot creation beyond Trae is not 6'7". So it's extra easy to load up on him and make his life a complete hell by just giving him the entirety of the defense's focus. Even though I do think Trae is a better playmaker between the two of them, which will lend an advantage, he is way more susceptible to just getting beat up throughout the entirety of a series. And last, but they might actually be least, I don't know. The Atlanta Hawks are probably worse, but the Orlando Magic, 3-point shooting. And this is an obvious one. They're 25th in the league in 3-point attempts, and they are last in makes, and they are last in percentage. I don't need to tell you why that is not a winning formula in the modern NBA. You could still get a good Paolo and Franz series, but if everybody else is missing their threes, and if they're missing a lot of their threes, it's just not going to be enough. They're going to be a good defense, and they're going to bank on their star guys, their star wing duo being enough to take them far, but the offense is just foundationally too broken for this to be the time that it happens. They really, really needed Jalen Suggs, and his 3-point percentage has not been very good this year, and then he got hurt and is out for the remainder of the year. They really, really need to address 3-point shooting in this offseason, and I really hope they do that. But with that in mind, Those were my X factors for every single playoff team in the NBA. Let me know what you thought, maybe what you disagree with, agree with, what concerns you about your favorite playoff team. And yeah, that's it. Goodbye.